if someone listened to all the episodes, they would be like, oh yeah, the Rachel that was mentioned.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want to go through how you started with that, especially since you said you're a liaison now.
Yeah. Okay, so I could start from the beginning. So I have always been a writer. I've always wanted to be a professional writer. And that goes back to when I was 5 years old, writing these very elaborate stories with my Barbie dolls and acting them out, as I think a lot of us did with our toys.
Yeah, I had little horses that I did that with.
Right, exactly. A lot of us have those stories. It was 2005, and it was October, so I was 16. I heard about NaNoWriMo from an online friend in fandom who was just going to use it to write fanfic.
Yeah.
And I heard about it halfway through October, and I was like, oh, this is such a cool idea. I love this. But I'm not ready. I can't write something. At that point, I had never written that much at one time.
Yeah.
And I was 16. So, I think if I hadn't made it to 50K, I think if you write during November, I think you're doing awesome, frankly. Because a lot of people don't do anything, especially around that time period.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, I'm not ready. I need to have the month to outline. It's in 6 days, and I just don't have time. Well, then the day before NaNoWriMo started, I got an idea. And I was like, you know what?
Of course.
Maybe I'll just start it. I don't know. And maybe if I don't make it to 50K, it'll be all right. It was actually music. It was a album that came out from a metal band that I really liked at the time. And it was one of their songs. I remember listening to it on the way home from the FYE, the music store. That's how long ago this was. Where we actually bought physical albums from a store in the mall, which obviously doesn't happen really. I don't think anybody does that anymore unless you're really into vinyls.
So long ago.
Yeah.
So long ago.
So I was listening to it on my CD player, by the way. I didn't have an iPod. A portable CD player in my mom's car. And I heard the song and I was like, oh my gosh. And it gave me just a million ideas. And so I started writing the next day on November 1st. And I've sort of been in it ever since. It was the first time I'd ever actually finished anything, which I think is true of a lot of people who do nano. To me, that's kind of the point of it, is to have a beginning, middle, and end, even if it sucks.
Yeah.
So I was 16. And I made the 50,000 that first year. And I've been doing it every year ever since. And it's, I don't know, the reason I keep going back to it, I think, is because I really want to publish. I spend a lot of my time throughout the whole year worrying about how does this coming across to readers, and trying to make my work really good and really accessible and really readable. During Nano, it's just fuck all that shit. Who gives a crap? I just sort of throw whatever sticks to the wall. And sometimes I come out with a story that I want to revise. Sometimes I don't. The 2016 election, that year the story I wrote was about a man named Brutus who gets elected as president of the United States by random draw. Yeah, I don't know. It was a lot.
I don't know where you got that from. That seems really far-fetched.
Right, yeah.
I have no idea where you would have gotten that from.
Right, why would I think that somebody completely unqualified could run for president? That's crazy. And win, wow. Yeah, but it was fun. He was forced to do it by the government. It was sort of a Zaphod Beeblebrox kind of thing, where he was a figurehead rather than an actual, person. And at the end, they overthrew the government. It was a year. 2016 was a year.
It definitely was.
Yeah.
Yeah. My 2016 novel was full of anger, and I look back and I'm like, look at that furiously angry, the most honest thing I've ever written, but my God, this is so angry.
Yeah. The other thing, especially starting Nano so young, I think it really taught me that you can't always wait for inspiration.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. I think that writer's block, the way to overcome that is just to write. And I know that sounds way easier than it actually is, but for me, if I can't think of what to do, writing is always the thing that solves that. I actually, the current work in progress that I'm working on, I got to a part when I was rereading it, because I haven't touched it in like 6 months. I got to a part, I was reading it around like chapter 10. I stop halfway through and I go, nope, we're not going that direction. And then I start over. And that's how you got to do it. You know, sometimes you don't really know. And I've tried, the second year I did Nano, I was like, I'm going to take the whole month to outline. I'm going to take October and that's what I'm going to do. That's the worst story I've ever written in my life, was the one that I tried to outline.
Yeah, I can't have like set outlines. I don't understand how people can do that, because then if I find out what the ending is, I'm like, oh, the end. There's the end of the story. That's it. We're done now.
Yeah.
You mean I have to write it now?
Right, exactly. And I don't know, and this may not be true of other people, but I don't know if something is going to work until I've written it into a scene. So I can say, oh, this is going to happen, but I don't know if that's going to work until I've actually written it, until the character is actually in it. So that's one of the reasons I think I can't outline, is because I need to actually go through it with the characters before I can sort of commit it. And so I'm a municipal liaison for my region, for NaNoWriMo, which basically means that I'm in charge of putting together what we call write-ins and other events. Like we have a kickoff party. We usually do a midnight kickoff party where we go meet at an all-night coffee shop and start writing at midnight on November 1st. It's really fun. And write-ins are basically where you just have a bunch of people come together in the same place and work on whatever they're doing. Somebody the other day called it co-working, and I was like, oh, that's a real person term for that. Okay. It's like essentially a study group, I've always compared it to. Just because it's motivating for me when when I'm around other people who are also working on this crazy, weird, stupid thing. If you say, hey, we're writing now, and then everybody is like, I don't know, it's one of those things where like if everybody's supposed to be working on their novel, and then at the end of that, you're like, oh, I was just on Tumblr the whole time. You know, so it's definitely an accountability thing. I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense. And it's like, if you're all working on, even if you're like silent working on your own stuff, you have the air of everyone has a common goal.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be fun to be like, hey, I need a name for this character. Go. Yeah. And then everybody just starts giving you names, which I've done that on Twitter and stuff before. Because I'm a pantser, which in NaNoWriMo terms means that I write by the seat of my pants. I don't know what I'm writing until I write it. The other end of that spectrum is a plotter, people who take October and September, and sometimes earlier than that, to sit down and outline the whole novel. I think most people are on a spectrum between those two things. I am like the most extreme form of pantser in that I literally don't even have a character usually until November 1st. So
I've noticed that just like from your tweets the past couple years watching you do Nano, you like discovering your characters has been really interesting, because I always start out like I know where I eventually want them to be, which I always find out, oh, this is halfway through the story. And then I have to figure out an ending.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people sort of go at it that way. Like they start with a group of characters, but they don't necessarily know where they're going. Or they have an ending, but they don't have a middle. I think that's where most people fall on the plotting and pantsing spectrum. Like I said, I'm a very extreme pantser. Last year, my Nano novel was basically spooky happenings in the woods. That's it. That was the whole novel. That's what I started with.
I mean, that still sounds interesting.
It was fun. I spent a lot of time on the cryptozoology wiki, which is really interesting, for the record. It's a lot. One of my favorite things I read on there, though, was when they were talking about shapeshifters, and there was a specific monster that they were like, some people theorize that this is a werewolf, but obviously that's ridiculous. Werewolves aren't real. And I'm like, that's where you draw the line? Okay, that's what you don't think exists is werewolves? All right, fine.
Sure, sounds legit.
There's all kinds of... Most of the American ones are in the Appalachian Mountains.
And I can see that.
So and learning that, I decided to set the story in Blacksburg, Virginia, because I grew up pretty close to there, so I know the area. Like my grandma and my mom and I would go shopping in Blacksburg. So there's a park ranger stationed there. So I was like, all right. And that's basically all I knew going in. I read a bunch of stuff on the cryptozoology wiki. I decided where it was set, and it was based on something that I already knew. And that was it. And I ended with something I really like. I actually didn't finish it until after Nano, which I think you probably saw my tweets about it. I got super, super sick at the end of last Nano.
Yeah.
So I made it to 50,000. I remember rolling over and waking up on like November 30th and just being super, super sick, but being like 1,000 words away from 50. And I just like typed a bunch of nonsense and then verified. Because it was like, this was, like I said, I've been doing Nano since 2005. So at this point, I've won every single year. At this point, I think I'd have to be dead or in a coma to not win NaNoWriMo, because I've done it so many times. And I don't mean that to sound like braggy or whatever.
Braggy. Yeah.
It's just more like I have a routine. I know how to do it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And winning, definitely in my region, like, we definitely encourage people to just, if you wrote more than you wrote in a regular month, you won as far as we're concerned. We care more about you creating something new and enjoying the process more so than the actual number of words. So
that's what I tried to tell the people in my group chat that I got into NaNoWriMo. One person only ended up doing about 17,000, and they were really upset, and I was like, but you would have never done 17,000 words if you hadn't done this. That's 17,000 words more than you would have ever written.
Exactly,
on this thing that you wanted to write.
Yeah, exactly.
And hopefully that made them feel better.
And I've had people say to me, well, what's even the point of doing it if you're not going to go to 50? And I'm like, it's a personal challenge. You don't win anything. Yeah. There is no prize. Yeah. Like, you get a certificate of achievement at the end, and that's about it. So it's really just a self-challenge, and it's forcing you out of your own comfort zone. It's not about competing with other people, unless that's something that helps you. I have a couple people in my region who are always trying to beat me, and that motivates them to keep their words going. So I'm like, yeah, all right, fine. Like, you can totally use me as your competition if that's something that helps keep you motivated.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I really like about Camp NaNowRimo, though, and why I always tell people, if you're really nervous about NaNoWriMo, or you don't think you could do it, or you're worried about the word count and the sustainability, try doing Camp NaNowRimo, because you can set your own goal, and it can be whatever you want it to be. They're very, very open, so you can set it to something very achievable, but maybe a little bit of a stretch. Like, maybe you want to try to write every single day, but maybe you're only writing like 500 words or 200 words, but you're doing it every single day. Or, you know, and if you end up like far surpassing that, you can even up your goal. You can change your goal on Camp NaNoWriMo until like 5 days before the end of the month. So, which is really nice. So yeah, I highly recommend Camp to people who, as like a test of whether you think you can do a nano or not, basically.
Yeah, the couple people that did NaNoWriMo with me in my group chat, they're doing Camp now again, and they're setting more realistic goals for themselves, because I think the 50,000 was kind of stressing everybody out.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it stresses me out, and I've won several times.
It's a fun stress for me, but yeah, it is stressful.
Yeah.
And it's not achievable for everyone, and that's totally okay. Some people are just not fast writers either, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I've met lots of people over the years who do nano once, and they're like, that was fun. It didn't work for me, though. I hate what I created. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. And that's great. That's awesome. Like, you tried a new thing, and that's it. Like, you decide whether it works for you. But yeah, I think Camp NaNoWriMo can work for pretty much anyone, because it's not just word count. You can also track pages, lines, hours, and minutes. So there's lots of different options for how to track your goals, which I really, really like.
Yeah, I really like that too. The one thing that I always struggle with Camp NaNoWriMo is it's not as like set in my brain as I need to do this like November is.
Yeah.
November is like, I take off work. I have 2 weeks off work and I do this, and everyone at work is like, oh, Phoebe is doing her writing thing that we still haven't seen. She says she's writing a book again. My boss last time, he's like, you've been doing this for 2 years and I've yet to see a book. And I'm like, it is not edited.
Right, that's
it takes a while.
Things non-writers say to writers. Oh, you're writing a book? When can I read it? No.
In 3 years.
Like, you can read it when it's published, bitch. Like, no.
Yeah, exactly. I have not seen anything from you. I'm like, listen, you don't want to read it right now.
Right.
It's not finished, and also it's garbage.
Right. It's interesting, the story that I'm currently working on, which this actually might be relevant to you because it takes place during VidCon, YouTube convention, for those who aren't aware. And it takes place, I think I said it in 2012 because I wanted it to be a very specific time in YouTube history where, like, people were still famous and people were still making money, but people weren't necessarily getting mobbed if they stepped out of backstage, you know?
Yeah, it's like micro fame almost.
Right, exactly. Like, people definitely know who you are, but it's not like a crazy level that it is now where, like, they literally don't allow creators onto the floor anymore. So,
yeah.
Which is sad, but I also understand. But this story, it was sort of a random happenstance. Like, I didn't mean to write it, but my friend and I were just hanging out at a coffee shop talking, and I showed them a picture of, it was Patrick Stump from Fall Out Boy, and he was, like, sitting in front of a bookcase, and I showed them the picture, and I was like, why does he look like a booktuber? And then we just started creating in our head this, like, weird alternate universe in which Patrick Stump is a booktuber. So that very night, I started writing a story about a booktuber going to VidCon for the first time and meeting his friends. And there's a love story because I can't not write those. And it was weird because we kind of came up with this idea together and we talked about it for like 2 hours before I started writing. I actually started sending them each chapter as I finished it, which I've never done before because I'm always like, nobody wants to read this. It's stream of consciousness garbage. I don't plan anything. Like, there's no foreshadowing. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know who these characters are yet. And so I told them that, and they were like, no, I'm just reading it because I want to read it. I won't give you any criticism unless you want it. So, but because of that, I was able to sort of keep writing, and it ended up being about 30,000 words long, so not super long, because it only takes place over the 4 days of VidCon. So it had to have an end. But I really, really liked how it turned out, and my friend got really, really invested in the characters and the love story, and I was like, oh man, this is cool. But it was, you know, I still did that thing where I was like, hi, I got 10 chapters in and then changed my mind, so you can read that part, but, like, it's not halfway through. I just yell, nope, nope, in all caps, and then start over. Because that's how I write. Like, I don't delete anything on the first draft. I just keep writing. I use the strike through button a lot, and which a lot of people think is weird, and that's why my first drafts are so unreadable, because I don't delete anything. Even, like, individual words I don't delete. And I think NaNoWriMo taught me that. But yeah, so it's... Yeah, I'm revising that story right now, and it's really interesting. Yeah, the process is very different between, like, first draft and actually giving a shit. Like, I've been working on the new revision for, like, 3 weeks now, and I just finished chapter 1. Versus I spat out chapter 1 in a day, you know, when I was writing it. So. Yeah.
It's a shame when you have to, like, start giving a shit, and you're like, oh, crap. Yeah. Now I have to, like... fix everything. Oh, I've got to fix it now. I've got to delete stuff. I got to change something. Oh, man.
I tweeted this the other day. I deleted a whole character, and the first chapter was still longer than the original one. I don't know how it happened. I'm just such an overwriter. I think that's one of the reasons I'm able to be successful at Nano. I'm a natural overwriter. I write, everything I write, at least 10K gets cut out. Like, when I revise it. That's just the way it is. It's part of the process for me. Like, and it's just a thing I know. Because I need that first couple chapters to sort of explore and figure it out. And it doesn't end up in the final draft, and that's fine. And I think that's the biggest thing about not just Nano, but, like, first drafting in general. You can always cut it later, so just do it. Like, rather than staring at it and be like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work, or, oh, this is dumb. Just do it. Like, you can cut it out and change it later. It's okay.
That's what I have to constantly force myself to acknowledge that I can cut it out, If I want to try something, I can try something. I don't have to delete it. You use strike through. I just use like the highlight, but I highlight in black. So I'll either my NaNoWriMos are just like solid walls of like black lines with a couple of lines that like I was like, I'll save this line, but the rest is just black lines, like they're censored bars or something.
Nice.
It's like my whole Nano's censored.
I mean, honestly though, like
some of it needs to be like censored, but like I never want to see this again. It's still here just in case, but I don't want to see it.
I know something that a couple of my friends do is a lot of us use Scrivener, which if you're not using it, I highly recommend. If you win NaNoWrimo, you get 50% off of it, so I think it's worth it. The 50% off makes it like $20, so it's 100% worth it to me. And it's a license, it's not a subscription. I always feel like I have to tell people that because so many things are moving to subscription models that I'm like, ugh. But yeah, no, you buy it and you have it, that's it.
It's yours now.
It's yours. It belongs to you. But I know a lot of people who just have like a Scrivener page where they just dump everything that they don't want in the story. And so it's just a bunch of like random paragraphs of stuff, but it still counts in the word count and they're not deleting it. They're just, out of sight, out of mind. So similar to what you and I do, but maybe cleaner probably.
Yeah. I have like my scenes in Scrivener because I write out of order. I write whatever I'm thinking about, whatever scene I'm thinking about. So I constantly have like little chunks everywhere. And then I have the section that's like, I never want to see this again, but it's moved away. And then I have a section that's world building stuff that like I need to just remember, but that doesn't have a place in the story.
Yeah.
As it currently is.
Yeah, the way my current project is set up. So I'm changing so many things that I'm just rewriting it from scratch. Even if the scene ends up being completely the same, the act of like writing it again really helps me. So I have the old draft on one side of the screen in a split screen and a new blank page on the other side. And so that's sort of how I'm rewriting it. And then I also have character pages for every single one of them because I also had to write down stuff like what are their YouTube statistics because that's important.
Oh yeah, that's so important.
Yeah,
oh my god.
Because it determines like one, how many people are going to talk to them at VidCon, and two, what their comment sections are like. And part of the plot hinges on my protagonist, my narrator, who was just a small-time booktuber, like very similar to a lot of my friends who are in that world, where they have maybe 10 to 20,000 subscribers. They're doing well enough that they have a nice comment section and they know a lot of people in that community, and it's just really fun and like a hobby thing, which is great. I miss when YouTube was just all that. It was really fun. But he gets discovered by this big YouTuber with like 4 or 5 million subscribers. And once he gets shouted out by that other YouTuber, who ends up being the love interest, spoiler alert, he gets like 100,000 subscribers overnight. And the comment section becomes a nightmare. And that's part of a plot point, is like how his YouTube experience sort of changes with that newfound micro fame. And a lot of those people don't stick around because they have very different audiences. So his watch statistics are like, he's still got 60,000 subscribers, but he still only gets like 20,000 views, But yeah, that's stuff I had to think about. And I've been watching a lot of like videos that I wouldn't usually watch just to get like everybody's style, and like, because I'm also going to include like vlog transcripts and like comments and DMs in between each chapter. So it's very internet based, and it's, I don't know, it's a fun story. I'm excited about it. I don't know, like,
it sounds fun.
I don't even know how to categorize it, like, because it's not really YA, but it's also not like adult. It's weird. I don't know. I'm just writing it and enjoying it right now, basically.
It sounds like it's the new was it young adult that they're trying to push?
New adult, yeah.
New adult.
Yeah, because my narrator's probably like 21 or 22. I think I put him as 22. Because I feel like there's a little bit of a gap there in publishing, It's either 15-year-olds or it's like 40-year-olds, And the college experience, like, or that college age experience, even if you don't go to college, like, it's just such a specific time of so many changes in your life, and I feel like there are lots of stories that need to be told there. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, like, from what I've seen, as I'm talking out of my ass, from what I've seen listening to the Smart Podcast, Trashy Books podcast, and all that stuff, there's a lot of the new adult stuff that's set, like, in colleges, but when it expands, it'll be nice to see things like what you're writing, where they're in their early 20s, they're trying to figure their shit out, but it's not, this is my college experience specifically.
Right, like...
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, one of my characters is in college, but they're not in college during this scene, or during this part of the story, you know?
Yeah.
And there's lots of different kinds. I think the oldest person in it is 28.
Yeah.
Because that was a fun thing when I was super, super into YouTube. And this is true in, like, fandoms and internet in general. It's so funny. Like, I'm almost 30. I turned 30 in a month and a half. I have friends who are, like, 19 and in their freshman year of college. And then, like, occasionally, you know, I also have friends who are, like, in their 50s and married and their kids are moved out, you know? And it's so kind of wild to have all those different experiences with different people. I've been getting to know a lot of teenagers lately, too, because I'm really into... I know for a fact you've seen me tweet about them. I don't know how, but They Found Me is my current favorite band. I've low-key been following them around the West Coast a little bit. But most of their fans are like 13, so it's just me in the front row with a bunch of children, and I'm just like, you know that these guys are like my age, right? Like, I mean, they're both older than me, but then all you are out here, and I don't know. I wonder sometimes, because I'm really into Panic at the Disco, too. Oh, I heard a kid.
Yeah. Yeah, he decided he was going to try to jump up on the computer next to the other one that hates him, so now she's upset because he's near her.
Well, I enjoy hearing the cats. I think that they should always be special guests on the pod, personally.
Oh, if they both get near each other, you're going to hear more of the cats, because if he looks at her, she's going to throw a fit.
Yep. But it's interesting, like, being super into Panic at the Disco, too, because, like, I'm Brendan's age, and I genuinely don't understand why all these 13-year-olds enjoy the music. I mean, everybody can enjoy whatever they want, obviously. But, like, the last Panic at the Disco album was basically about, like, taking tequila shots off a drag queen's ass and then going home to have a quarter-life crisis over it. Like, what do these people have, like... I don't understand it, like, because that's my life right now in Vegas, and so I relate to it very deeply. Like, literally, there's a song called Roaring 20s that's about turning 30 and, like, not feeling like an adult and feeling like everyone is more accomplished than you, and I'm like, that's such a specific experience that, like, these 12-year-olds don't have, and I don't understand what they're getting out of the current music, but, you know, that's okay, I guess. It's just strange being surrounded by all these, like, 14-year-olds and being like, but I don't know. This music isn't really for you. Like, okay.
What's going to happen is it's going to be in 10 years, they're going to listen to this again and be like, oh, yeah.
Honestly, yeah. Probably. They're probably when
like, oh, that's what they were talking about.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I've been a fan since I was actually 16. When the band members were also 16, so I have very much grown up with them in a lot of ways. So it's interesting that, like, all of these new children are finding out about them now, and I'm like, cool, that's great. Like, I definitely don't consider
the next generation,
right? Like, it's one of those things, and a lot of people are getting into Queen now because of the Queen movie, which I have a lot of opinions about, and we don't need to get into it.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, but I love that a bunch of teenagers and, like, younger people are sort of finding out their legacy and, like, listening to their music. I think that's amazing. Like, I don't think that when you discover a band has anything to do with how big of a fan you are, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that coincides with a lot of fandoms, too. Like, who cares if you discovered Lord of the Rings through the movies? The point is that, you know, you're here now, like, and you're into it.
Yeah, you enjoy it.
Yeah, and, like, YouTube, it doesn't matter if you've been here since 2005. Like, you enjoy the content. You're not a piece of shit, hopefully.
Depending on who you subscribe to and what your values are, you may be. But that's for another time.
That's true. That's a very different conversation.
That's a very different conversation. Like, I got into YouTube and all of that within the past, like, 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be 31 this year. I'm old.
You and me both.
And my sister, like, grew up with Dan and Phil And I'm like, oh yeah, like Dan and Phil. And she's like, yeah, I've known about him since I was like 12. And I'm like, I'm so old.
Yeah.
And I have teenagers at work and they're like, oh yeah, I'm 16 and I love Dan and Phil. And I'm like, I feel so old.
Right? Yeah, I feel 100 years old every time I'm in a concert, like standing next to a 13-year-old who's like, oh my God, I love them so much. I'm like, I'm proud of you. Good job. Like, I am 100 years old. Like, people who are like, oh, I was 2 when the first Fall Out Boy album came out. Oh, God. Oh
like,
God.
Oh, okay.
Like, I wasn't... It's getting to the point now where it's like, oh, I wasn't even born yet when the first My Chemical Romance album came out. Jesus Christ.
It's like, my parents conceived me to the first My Chemical Romance.
Oh, my God. That would be...
Oh, okay.
Oh, my God. It's so funny. It's been fun watching you get into Dan and Phil, too, because, like, I'm not hugely into them, but I definitely know who they are, and they've been sort of on the periphery of my entire YouTube career, fandom, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I told you once I thought they were the same person for a good solid minute. Like, especially back at the beginning.
Oh, yeah, they were very similar.
Because I remember... Dan Is Not on Fire. That's how I knew him. And for a minute, I just, didn't realize that there were 2 of them. Because they were always, even back then, they were always sort of in relation to each other. It was always Dan and Phil. It wasn't just like one of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know which one is which now.
I'm glad that you finally figured it out.
But yeah,
It took me a little bit. Like, my first, month and a half, I was like... Dan is always on the left side.
Oh, gosh.
Because I couldn't remember, their names in relation to who they were.
Right,
and I'm like,
right.
He's just always over there.
Yep, sounds legit. Yeah, I am less into YouTube than I used to be, though Rhett and Link are coming to my city, so I might see them when they come by just because they're here. So,
yeah, why not?
I have no idea what their live shows are like. So, if I go, I'll report back.
I tell people my interests are very broad, but also really narrow in that broadness.
Yeah.
Like I'm a fan of YouTube, these 5 people.
Yep.
And then someone will be like, have you watched so-and-so? And I'm like, no, because I'm watching these 5 people. And then I have no interest outside of that.
Yeah.
One of my other managers, I think, listens to... Does Rhett and Link have a podcast or something?
They do. Ear Biscuits.
Okay, yes, she listens to that. She's like, you need to listen to this. And I'm like, I will when I get done listening to these literal 100 other podcasts that I have subscribed to.
Oh my God,
and I've been trying to figure out the time to listen to these.
Right. I have too many podcasts on my to listen list. They're just sitting in my subscriptions that I'm just not listening to.
Yeah.
There's
so many.
There's so many. And there are things I would love to get into Critical Role, for example, but then I look at how long the episodes are, and I'm like, guess I'll never know.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't do 3 hours. I can't do it. Welcome to Night Vale was my introduction into podcasts, and honestly, I think that it was perfect because every episode is only 20 minutes, so it's very sort of easily consumable. In a way that I think a lot of podcasts are not. Helps that it's a fiction podcast and it's very tightly written, but...
Yeah, they do really good with that, and they've stayed pretty consistently really good.
Yeah, that's a thing that I find myself getting frustrated a lot with YouTube lately, too. I'm not opposed to videos being longer than 10 minutes if they need to be. If the content actually justifies it. But there's so many people now who are just... talking a bunch of bullshit and not saying anything important and spending 3 minutes just introing the video so that they can get to that 10-minute mark. And I'm like, just no. Yeah. It's bad. And that's how I feel about a lot of podcasts too. Yours are, I think that #fandom is very tightly edited, so well done.
Thank you, because I really, when a couple episodes got over the 1 hour mark, I'm like, listen, I wouldn't listen to this.
Right?
If I can't listen to it done double speed on my half-hour drive to work, I'm like, this is too long.
Right, yeah.
It's like, I can't.
Yeah.
I would not listen to this, therefore I don't expect anyone else to listen to this.
It's funny. I listen to a lot of podcasts on, not always double, but at least 1.5.
Yeah.
It depends on which one it is. I listen to Night Vale at its natural length, whatever.
I do the same thing. Yeah.
Just because I feel like Cecil's voice deserves that.
Yeah.
But then there are other podcasts, like I listened to Race Tracer by Alaska and Willem, which is a RuPaul's Drag Race podcast. And Alaska's voice is incredible. It makes me so happy. I can listen to it on double speed and it sounds like a normal voice because she speaks so slowly and she has that vocal fry. So literally I have it at double speed and she sounds like I'm talking like right now. It's incredible. So I always listen to that one at double speed. And then Willem is like a chipmunk in the background. It's fine.
Like the only ones I listen to normally are the Night Vale, and then I listen to Lore and I listen to Cabinet of Curiosities, also by Aaron Manke, just because I appreciate, like, he keeps them tight. He keeps it, like, even, like, his ads, I tweeted him one time, and I was like, thank you for, like, even your ads, like, flow smoothly, and I don't want to skip them. I don't feel like, oh god, here's a pre-recorded ad, let me, like, skip 30 seconds here. Lore, like, I listen to Lore on normal speed, Cabinet of Curiosities on normal speed, and Welcome to Night Vale on normal speed, because they're the perfect time for me to drive to work in my half-hour drive to work.
Yep.
They usually fit in that time slot real good, and I don't want to speed it up because that does feel like a disservice to Aaron Manke's voice and Cecil's voice.
Right, yeah.
And the writing and the effort they put into it.
Cecil's voice is like, basically ASMR to me. I love it so much.
It really is. He's so very good.
Yeah.
I'm re-listening to the entire podcast now.
I really should do that. There's lots of stuff I've forgotten.
Oh, yeah. I started re-listening to it so I could listen to Good Morning Night Vale.
Right.
Which I listened to on a faster speed.
Yeah.
But yeah, and their insights on Good Morning Night Vale is really cool as well. Talking about, like, behind the scenes and, like, how the growth of Night Vale as they went along.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't listened to it at all, so it's one of those that's just sitting in my subscriptions that I haven't listened to yet.
Yeah, they do a really good job with, like, hey, this is what was happening when he released the first episode, and then this is what was happening when he released the second episode. This is what was happening behind the scenes when, like, the show took off and we were all like, whoa. Like, so Deb did really good. Not Deb. Meg Bashwinner, who plays the voice of Deb.
Yeah.
Is a really good hostess on that.
That's cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
That kind of reminded me of, like, editing and back to writing and stuff. I have very strong preferences with, like, writing and stuff, too. I think, honestly, one of the reasons I have a hard time getting into fantasy is because they feel like, a lot of fantasy books I've read, they feel like they need to tell you every single detail about every little thing, always.
Oh my god, right. I'm reading one of those right now.
Or they have, like, 7 points of view, and I'm like, you really don't. I don't need that. That's not interesting.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, a lot of fantasy is very popular, so, you know, different strokes for different folks and all that, but I really like very close, tightly edited, nothing that isn't unnecessary kind of writing.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with writing, too, is, like, I definitely have my preferences, and on this revision I'm currently working on, obviously I'm thinking about that. First draft, don't think about it. It doesn't matter at all. Write those 7,000 epilogues. It's fine. Like, that's the thing. I hate epilogues. I think every epilogue I've ever read has been pointless. That's a very hard, very unpopular opinion, but I've genuinely never read one that I felt like added to the story in any way. But again, during Nano, when you're writing a first draft, write 3 different epilogues. I don't care. Like, if that's what you need to do to get the story out, write a dumb prologue. It doesn't matter. And that's sort of always how I approach first drafting. I break a lot of my own rules and a lot of my own preferences. I'm just like, go out the window. My last Nano novel, I actually started with 2 points of view alternating. But by the end of it, I think the last 15,000 words were just in 1 point of view. So it was one of those things where, like, by that point, I was like, if I revise this, it's only going to have 1. But, like, when I started it, I needed to know the other character the same way that I knew who ended up being the narrator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We see these beautiful, like, finished products, and we get really sort of down on ourselves that, like, what we're writing is not at that level. But of course it's not. You're not seeing the early drafts. You're not seeing the late nights yelling at your computer. Like, you're not seeing all of the notes about the characters and all of the sketches and outlines and drafts and stuff. It's why I love pointing people to drafts that writers publish online. Have you ever read the original Supernatural script?
I have not, but now I want to.
It's bad. It's real bad.
I was going to say, it sounds like it would be very questionable.
They were not called the Winchesters. They were called something else. Like, their last name was something else.
I need to do some Googling.
It was bad. It was not good. The original Star Wars script is a piece of trash. It is the worst thing I've ever read. It's so bad. But, you know, it was a first draft, and then we ended up with something that became iconic and legendary. Like, but it really puts into perspective. And then another thing I love, Stephen King, in his book on writing, he includes the original ending to the book Misery, which is very different than what was published. And I love reading that stuff and being like, oh, I understand why you decided to rewrite this, or I understand why you decided this wouldn't play well with the audience, you know? And so I highly encourage people to look up that kind of stuff and listen to authors talk about their first drafts. John Green has a great... Actually, let me see if I can find it. Did you ever read The Fault in Our Stars?
I did not, because I didn't want to read about children with cancer.
Absolutely understandable. Also, frankly, I hate that that's the one that got popular, because it's my least favorite John Green novel.
Yeah. I was like, you know, if I'm going to escape into a world, I want to escape into, like, a happy world that's not filled with angst and drama. I don't even read, like, angsty fics either, because I'm like, I want to be happy, because everything in life is terrible. So why would I want to read about it?
Right. I completely and totally understand that. I know that he posted it on his Tumblr. Where the fuck is it? Because
I need to reread the Stephen King on writing, because it's been a couple years since I read it, and with me trying to, like, edit this novel to be workable by the end of the year, which is my goal that I'm not doing too well on. Like, I need all the help I can get, I think.
Yeah. Let me see. Okay, a couple people have written about it. I really wish... I want your Tumblr post that John himself wrote, but I can't find it.
If you eventually end up finding it, I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, because it's fucking hilarious. It's so bad that his editor read it and was like, I can't tell if this is a joke. Like, that's how bad it is. Okay, so the original ending, I found an article on Teen Vogue that talks about it. So one of the endings has Hazel, the narrator, and Peter Van Houten. I watched the movie and I still don't know how to pronounce that name. But they decide to honor Augustus's life in a sacrificial way. You can't see my air quotes, but I'm doing them.
What?
So John wrote a 40-page ending that followed Hazel and Peter as they track down a drug lord and kill him, and then Hazel and Peter die in a hail of bullets from all the security around the drug lord. It's incredible.
I can see why the editor was like, is this a joke?
And I just feel like I need to remind you that, like, for anybody listening who's never read a John Green book, he writes very sappy, like, contemporary YA fiction. Yeah. So, like, dying in a hail of bullets while fighting a drug lord is not really fitting with the tone of anything that he writes. But yeah, that's a great example, I think, regardless of how you feel about how The Fault in Our Stars actually ended. We can all agree that this is worse. Like, we can all agree that this is bad. So yeah, it's so good. Like, it makes me so happy inside. Like, because it's so bad.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's terrible. Anyway, I hate The Fault in Our Stars. Like, I'm so mad that it's the one that got popular. But that's okay. He also did a really great video, because it took him like 6 years to write another book after that one. And he made a very good video about the pressure that he was under to create something that had the same impact.
Yeah.
And so it's a good video, because there was a point in his life where he was like, I don't even know if I'm ever going to write again. And he made that video, like, before he'd written anything, before he'd published anything else. So I don't know. I found it, regardless of how you feel about John Green as a writer, as a person, I thought that it was a very helpful video in terms of what it is to be a writer and the pressure that we put on ourselves to create a specific type of thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I see the show notes link. Okay. I will. Let me add that Teen Vogue article. If I can find the Tumblr post, I will, because the Tumblr post is great, because even John is like, nope, this was bad. It was a good change. Yeah, I think a lot about old internet sometimes. Somebody linked me the other day to a fic that was on fanfiction.net, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, people still go there? I was just so shocked that it's apparently still, like...
It's still alive.
Yeah, because I have not touched anything except AO3 in so long. I occasionally will go back to, like, LiveJournal for old fics that haven't been transferred over to AO3. Because there's still some that are in, like, old communities and stuff. And I don't mind those as much. But yeah, fanfiction.net. I was like, God.
One thing I miss about LiveJournal is it would be really hard to transfer old fics that the author specifically, like, did the HTML to make it appear like there were comments. Like, if there was... I remember a specific, like, Sherlock fic where Sherlock was a big-name fan, a big writer in the other Sherlock fandom, and John was, like, his editor or something, and so they actually did the HTML to make, like, fake comment threads.
Oh, my God.
in the page. And I'm like, that's... Because they did very good. Whoever did that HTML did very good. They looked so real.
That's so interesting. That's so cool, man.
And it was very, very meta looking back. I was like, damn, but that's a lot of effort. And I'm not sure you could translate that into AO3 or have even, like, like, if someone was only reading it on AO3, they'd be like, why is it look like this?
Right.
Because they never would have been in LiveJournal in a community and know about communities or locked communities or comment threads in the LiveJournal format, all that kind of stuff, you know?
This is somewhat related, but I remember in the Queer as Folk fandom, there was one fic that I got. It was on, like, every rec list. Like, everybody was always recommending it, but the person's account was locked, and she hadn't signed on to LiveJournal in a long time. So I was like, well, I guess I'm never going to read it. And then finally, she, like, mass added a bunch of people, I guess, logged on and, like, I don't know, whatever. And so I finally was, like, excited to finally read it after, like, 2 years, and it wasn't that great. And I was so disappointed. I was like, this is not what I wanted.
I waited so long.
And this was mediocre, but okay.
Yeah.
I'm obviously not going to say what fic it was.
Well, no.
I don't even remember.
Politeness.
I just remember it was... I think people summarized it wrong, or maybe the title, because I opened it and started reading it, and I was like, oh, this is not what I wanted it to be. Yeah. And I think maybe that was the problem, is I was expecting something completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Queer as Folk fandom is 99% porn, let's be real, so it's...
This is shocking. I'm shocked.
Right, based on the content of the show, you would never guess that.
I have never been more shocked in my life.
I miss kink memes. I think that's the number one thing I miss from LiveJournal. Because it was fun to sort of anonymously leave a prompt of your sin and then have other people who you don't know just anonymously write something really disgusting for you. And nobody had to be shamed for it, and nobody had to know who was doing what and who liked what. And if your prompt went unanswered, it was like, well, I'm on Anon, so who cares?
Yeah. Or I'm alone with my sin.
Right.
No one else.
I am alone here,
This
and now
is
I
too
know
much.
that. Now I know not to talk about this with anyone.
I'm alone forever.
Yeah, I miss kink memes. They were fun. There just isn't really, like, a mechanism for that anymore.
There really isn't. Like, this is old school stuff that the youth don't know about anymore.
Right, now you gotta tag all your shit under your username, which I support tagging everything, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
But, you know, maybe sometimes you don't want something in particular associated with your account. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a secret AO3 that is specifically for kudoing gross stuff. Like,
I have 2 AO3 accounts. That way, if I, like, wanted to write something, that I would be like, you know, I don't want anyone to know I wrote this.
Yep.
I have another place I can post it. It's just sitting there.
Yep.
Just in case.
Just in case. You never know.
Just in case it's there.
You never know.
And I'm like, this this is the thing. This is where I'm going to post that one really nasty thing if I ever come up with it and decide to write it.
Yep. I sort of have a policy. This year, it's been sort of my goal to leave a comment on every fic I finish all the way.
Yeah.
Because if I make it to the end, and that means that I enjoyed it most of the time, unless it's like a drabble or something super short. But if it's like a 10,000 word long fic and I made it to the end, that person deserves a comment, even if it's just like a smiley face, you know? So
exactly.
That's sort of been, in 2019, I've left a comment on every single fic I've read, and that includes fandoms I'm not usually in. I read one about The Good Place earlier this year that I was like, that's not a fandom I ever thought I'd be in, and I'm not really in it, but somebody linked it because it was somebody talking about how they wished that The Good Place would leave the classical philosophers and move to more progressive modern philosophers. And so somebody took it upon themselves to write basically Chidi teaching a class on modern, mostly female philosophers. And it was just a gen fic. Like, it wasn't, I just thought it was cute. And I was like, I hear all of these people's voices in my head. And so that's the comment I left. I was like, I heard all of this in my head. Good job.
Yeah, and that's great.
Yeah.
I need to make a point to leave more comments, because in 2019, I made a point to, if I liked someone's book, and I follow them on Twitter, or to like find their Twitter and be like, hey, I liked this thing that you created. I like this podcast that you created. Because there's so much negativity directed at everybody. I was like, I can be more positive for them. It's just one comment, but at least it's a positive thing among like whatever hate they may be getting that day.
Yeah, that's really nice. I like that a lot. Maybe I should start doing that. Most of the time when I talk about books online is to yell about them. And not necessarily
yell at the authors, because apparently they appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I once, okay, so my current favorite is Adam Silvera, who's a YA writer, and he wrote a book last year called They Both Die at the End, which is exactly what it sounds like. They both die at the end. That's not a spoiler because it's in the title. But there was a point like where I was almost at the end, and I was so attached to these characters, and I knew it was coming because there was a countdown and everything. And I was just like, hey, Adam, what if they like don't die at the end though? What if? And then at the end, I just sent him a message, and I was like, I hate you so much. I hate this novel. I hate this book. I just bought it so I can read it 3 more times. And he was like, yeah, good. And I did that to Michael Grant, who's one of the co-authors of Animorphs, too. I sent him a message once, and I was like, how do you feel about the fact that you ruined my childhood? And he replied with, good, we revel in it. So that's what I mean by yelling. I think they all get what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Like, I've realized that, like, because I follow a lot of romance novel authors and authors of color and Victoria Dahl, things like that. Mm-hmm. And I realized after I tweeted like 1 or 2 people, and I got responses, I was like, well, shit. I was like, oh, they actually look at their replies. Oh, they can look at their replies, right? Because they're authors. They're not these famous people or the YouTube people with millions of followers that are constantly screaming at them all the time about various things. So they can actually go through all of their replies, and they'll actually see if I say something nice.
Yeah, which is both cool, and definitely when somebody replies to you, it's like, oh god, oh no. Like, yeah, you feel like you have to go and like cleanse your account.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit. I was like, well, they wrote about like I think Cameron Hurley replied to me, and I'm like, listen, she's written about like some like filth, people being dismembered. I'm like, whatever like she sees on my homepage, like, it's fine.
Yep. Yeah, no, Michael Grant followed me back on Twitter, and I was like, oh god, oh no, don't do that. I can
never tweet about anything ever again.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, Catherynne Valente, for example, has retweeted me a bunch of times, and I'm like, oh god, why are you doing this? And I think she retweeted almost everything that I sent her about her last book, which was called Space Opera, which I might add that to my recs, because space opera is easily one of my favorite things I read last year.
I remember that. I need to read that. I need to buy it and read it.
It's one of those things that feels like it was custom tailored to me as a human being, because it's about a pansexual glam rock star who gets visited by aliens. And I'm if that ain't my entire aesthetic right there.
Yeah.
So it's very good. It's very weird. I saw some people complaining that it was a little bit too exposition-y, but I didn't mind that at all because basically every other chapter is narrative based on this glam rock star, and then in between those chapters it explains all of the different races of aliens and how they came to be part of this galactic coalition. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so I liked that. I thought it was really cool, and I was very interested in all these different races because she made some actually really weird and cool things that are not like bipedal and like human based, you know?
Yeah.
There was one race that was literally just a virus that possessed corpses. So it was, yeah, very interesting.
Definitely aliens, so.
Yeah. So yeah, Space Opera by Catherynne Valente is easily the best book I read last year, probably. So.
That's really cool.
Yep.
Have you read anything by, like you said you like weird stuff. Have you read anything by T. Kingfisher, Ursula Vernon?
No, I have not.
Because, like, the thing that I've, like, this is like the third time I've read this book, like, almost back to back, which is something I have never done before. I bought it for, like, 2 coworkers, and one coworker won't shut up about it now. It's about a widow. I talked about it in another podcast app, so they're gonna, like, everyone's gonna be like, God, she's talking about this fucking book again.
That's okay.
A widow finds a man in a sword. When she unsheaths the sword, he appears.
Yeah. I remember from, it was either the last episode or the episode before that. I listened to them back to back, so I don't remember which was which.
Aw, you listened to the episodes? I'm so happy.
I did indeed. I am one of your 8 listeners.
Aw.
I don't always listen right away. Sometimes I wait like 2 or 3 weeks, but yeah. It's usually when the next episode comes out, I'm like, oh shit, I gotta listen to the last one.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I'm usually a couple weeks behind, but yes.
Yeah, that's one of the books I won't shut up about. Because it's so pure.
Yeah, I should put it on my to-read list. I've got 2 books sitting on my shelf right now. I just started Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik.
Oh yeah, I need to buy that and read that.
Yeah, which, you know, I love her. I mean, I loved her fic when we were in the same fandom, so, you know.
I'm trying to think of when I was in the same fandom as her. That was way back in Adam Lambert.
It was indeed. Yep.
And then now she's in Transformers doing sexy Transformers.
Which is every time, like, I have her on AO3 notifications, and every time I get one, I'm like, well then, all right. That's good for you.
I tried reading a couple, and I'm like, maybe I'll be into the robot sexing. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, I'm not into it. I'm like, you go, girl. I'm not into the robot sexing, but I'm glad that some people are.
Right. And I'm sure and I'm sure that it's well written. It's just not my thing, you know.
Yeah, I was like, this looks great. It's just not for me.
It's funny. I've been in fandom for so long that there are some writers that I still follow and still have notifications for, just on the off chance that maybe they decide to go back to one of their old fandoms to revisit. Because I have a couple friends who do that. Like, I have a friend who actually wrote me a fic because they were like, you know, I haven't written in these fandoms in a long time. I don't know what I'm writing right now. So just give me some prompts and a pairing, maybe, especially one, you know, from years and years back. And I was like, ooh, me.
They wrote it for you?
They wrote it for me. And I was like, yay. But yeah, they hadn't written that particular pairing in like 3 years or something. And so it was just like, you know, so I'm still subscribed to these people just in case.
That's me with one person in Avengers fandom.
Yeah. That
wrote like the only like sci-fi-esque thing I've ever loved, which was Tony in space with Jarvis. And like Tony was the connection between like 3 different spaceships as they all communicated like through him. And so he's like, at one point was like screaming nonsense because they were all using his brain to talk to each other.
Wow.
And it was like it sounds like a lot worse, but it was like space opera. I think it was called like space opera, where they had to go out into space and find Tony in like this alternate universe. And I'm still waiting because I don't even remember what they're writing now, but I'm like, if you ever get the urge, I'm waiting. I'm right here.
Yeah, no, there's one
waiting for Avengers fandom to come back.
I've got one who's still a very prolific author, just not in any of the fandoms that I'm in, unfortunately. But again, I'm still there, so every time I get a notification, I'm like, is this it? Nope. They are instead writing Pod Save America RPF, which I'm like,
what?
I didn't know that was a thing, but okay.
I'm not surprised that it's a thing, because if the Pod Save America and Pod Save the World guys are like pretty much the same people, which I think they are,
yeah,
even though I really can't tell their voices apart. And I realized this recently. I was like, shit, this is how guys feel when they're like, I can't tell ladies' voices apart. I'm like, this is how I feel about these three guys.
There's one of them that's distinctive, but I can't remember which one it is. I don't listen to them regularly. I did see them live when they came to Vegas a year and a half ago, but it was, yeah, which was fun because they did a lot of local politics stuff. Yeah, like they played a game that had me rolling in my seat laughing. But it was one of those things that's very specific to like my audience, you know?
Yeah.
Because it was about our former senator. We voted him out last year, thank God. It was about our former senator, Dean Heller, where they basically were like, here are 3 statements about a specific issue. Which one of these did Dean Heller say? And it was stuff like about gun control and like about all these issues. And they were 3 like wildly different things, like completely different stances. The answer was always, he said all 3 of these. Let's tell you when he said these things. He said these 2 things within 3 weeks of each other. Like, so the whole thing was just, yeah, basically making fun of him for being a piece of shit, which is great. We voted him out. I don't have to think about him anymore except to make fun of him, which is great.
That's one thing I like about the set of guys. I listen to more Pod Save the World because when you get down to like the actual like nothing but American politics, that's when the anxiety sets in and when I start wanting to set things on fire.
Yep.
But I need to know about what's happening, like, actually in the world, so I listen to that whenever it comes out twice a month, or on, well, no, it's like every Tuesday or something.
Yeah, that's probably a good, yeah, the only political podcast that I listen to regularly is Says Who, hosted by Maureen Johnson and Dan Sinker, and it's less about the actual politics and more just, screaming, about how...
I should subscribe to that.
They did, for example... Their tagline is, it's not a podcast, it's a coping strategy.
Yeah, I should subscribe to that. That sounds like a good time.
Yeah, and Maureen Johnson is honestly one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. She's so great. But like Thanksgiving last year, they recorded a Thanksgiving episode specifically for people who had to be at home with their racist family. Like, especially for younger people or, you know.
Yeah.
And so it was basically set up as like, if you have an hour to go hang out in your room after listening to Aunt Carol yell about the immigrants, this is for you. We're just here telling you about, you know, soothing things, calming things, and assuring you that you're not the crazy one. So it's, I like that sort of, yeah, it's a coping strategy. They don't really talk about the news as much as they scream at each other in a way that, and like make lots of jokes about Disneyland and wedge salads. I don't know. But that's the only one.
It really sounds like a much better podcast than like any news podcast.
I mean, I'm probably a little bit less informed about what's actually happening, but I feel better. So.
Well, yeah, and like if it's something that's seriously going down, it's like the nukes have been launched.
Yeah,
you'll find out.
Oh yeah.
You'll find out real fast.
Yep.
If it's something that's actually like really serious.
Yeah, and I haven't listened to the whole thing, but Dan Sinker, the co-host, he and his wife and kids bought an RV and lived in an RV for a couple of months and traveled the world, or not the world, they traveled the country. He had a podcast called The Hitch where they just talked about like what they were doing and how they were surviving with a teenager and a baby and a dog all in an RV. And that was really interesting too. And they sort of did that as a way to be like, hey, it's now or never. The last time I saw Fall Out Boy, I was in a lift with other people. And honestly, one of the funniest things, like, I was just sitting in the back of that lift, like, trying not to cry. It was a whole moment. I was having a lot of feelings about Disloyal Order of Water Buffaloes. And I got some good pictures of Pete when he was right in front of me. And it was so funny because the girls in my car with me were so drunk. This was a shared lift, so strangers. And we were just talking about, oh, what were we doing tonight? And I was like, Fall Out Boy. I got pictures of Pete Wentz. And the girl next to me just goes, oh, I love him so much. Can I see? And she's like wasted. And I'm like, yeah, here's pictures of Pete. And we're just like crying together over these like iPhone pictures of Pete Wentz. Like 30-year-old women in a back of a car in Las Vegas. So I hope he's proud of us.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that was a I felt bad for my friend a little bit because I was having like an emotional breakdown that week, and then the concert just sort of capped off that, and so I was just a mess. Like it was a lot. But thanks, Pete. We're doing fine now. It's okay. I hope that I hope that the whole llama lawsuit is going okay for you. I still don't completely understand. So Fall Out Boy is getting sued for using the llamas too much. And if anybody...
What llamas are we talking about?
So,
are they puppets?
They were costumes, like mascot costumes.
Oh, okay.
They were in all of the music videos. And they brought them on stage during the concert, and I wanted to crawl into the floor and die because I hate them. I don't like mascots. I don't like puppets. I find them very creepy. So part of me is like, you're getting sued. Good. But then another part of me
maybe you'll learn.
Like, but like, they don't have a case. Like, they had the puppets commissioned, and the people who made the puppets are now claiming that they were only intended to be used for one video and they weren't meant to be exploited like that. And I'm like, okay, but
because the puppets have feelings,
right? But like, you sold it to them, and that's not how copyright works. Like, you sold it to them and gave them the rights, and so there's no case. But like, yeah, I'm just excited to see Pete Wentz rolling up in like sweatpants and his bad hair. Just like
talk about the llama
courtroom to talk to the furries. Like, I'm excited about it. So that's the kind
of drama that I'm like, yeah, okay, that's all right drama.
Yeah, honestly, it's my favorite kind of wank. Like, stuff that has nothing to do with the fandom. That's just hilarious because it is.
It's innocent. The fandom didn't fuck anything up. We're just here to witness this.
Right. It's not like VidCon where a bunch of girls tried to break into Charlie McDonald's room. Like, it's not that kind of wank. It's it's somebody fell on stage kind of wank, which is great.
Yeah. Or in Dan and Phil fandom when they live streamed their porch for 5 hours as an April Fool's joke.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember because other people were talking about it.
Yeah. Their porch with no birds. Because someone down below was feeding the pigeons that they were trying to stream. So they didn't have any birds for 5 hours.
Was there a squirrel, or am I making that up?
There was no squirrel. Okay. We saw 3 pigeons and their hands as they passed the food in front of the camera just to fuck with us. And then nothing else because they're both assholes.
I mean,
But that was like innocent. Everyone was like, my God, a pigeon has appeared. Everyone log in right now. Hurry, a pigeon's here.
Oh my gosh. Most of the people I stan don't do anything, which is like, as soon as because I'm really into a lot of fandom stuff lately, which, I mean, we met through music. Like, we met through Adam Lambert. So like, this is not an unusual thing for me. It's always just every couple years it's somebody different. And it would still be Adam if he was actually doing anything other than Queen. But that's basically his whole life right now, which is fine, but...
Yeah, it's fine. I wish he'd shave, but that's his business.
God, at this point, I've just accepted that the Melvin is here forever, and
He's trying to go Barry.
I don't like it.
I don't know what he's trying to do. It's like, it's fine. It's his face.
Right. I believe very strongly in bodily autonomy, and he can do whatever he wants. I don't have to like it. It's none of my business. But I don't like it.
I don't have to see it.
Right.
It's fine. This is why I'm not watching Jacksepticeye's videos right now. Because he will not stop with the neck beard situation that he's trying to grow.
Yeah.
And I can't. I'm like, I'm sorry, bro. I can't look at your face right now.
My current I wouldn't say this is a fandom, but like the drummer of my favorite band has blue hair, and he keeps saying, I think I'm gonna change my hair, and I'm like, please don't. Like,
the blue hair is so cool.
I love the blue hair. The blue hair is so good. Like, I support you whatever color you choose, but also I love the blue so much. Also, we have almost the same color, so it's like we're still matching. We're part of the blue hair squad. I mean, I'm going to
write him like a heartfelt letter being like, please don't change your hair because we match.
Along with the commenting on fanfic thing, I've also started commenting on like Instagram and Twitter and stuff, and just being sort of more interactive, because like it's so easy, especially on Instagram, to just sort of passively like everything.
Yeah.
And then not actually interact with the person. So I've started doing, like the other day, my friend dyed her hair purple, and I liked the picture, and I thought, that's a really cute color on her. And I started to scroll, and I was like, nope. And I went back and commented, I like that hair color on you. I think it looks really cute. The end. Yeah. So, like, it doesn't even have to be anything, like, important or whatever. So that's something that I've started trying to do better at, like, having actual interactions with people instead of just sort of this passive social media culture of liking and shouting into the void and whatever.
Yeah, I've tried to like give feedback in ways that I would like feedback, so I try to like leave comments and not just like kudos something and then keep rolling.
Right.
I've been trying to like comment on Twitter and tell someone when I like something, or like give some feedback that they might want, and not just like me shouting at them into the void, because I would like feedback, especially starting this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
I've tried to interact with more podcasts, that way like my account is seen, so maybe more people will find my podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that's worked a little bit.
I think that's the most like authentic way to promote, is to be engaged, personally.
Yeah, that's what I've tried to be, instead of being like, my podcast here, blah.
Yeah.
Engaging, and then if they want to find more, they can always find more, but not like pushing it at people, because I always hate when someone's like, here's this thing, and then they shove it at your face 10 times.
Right, and somebody following you and getting to know you as a person and being like, oh, I like her, and then being like, oh, I'll check out this thing that she's creating,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would much rather it be that, instead of me being like, hey, here's this link, here's another link, hey, here's this, have you listened to it yet? Are you going to listen to it? No, I made this thing. It's like, no, that sounds like something a straight white man would do, and I don't want it to be like that.
Right.
Do you have any other recs or anything aside from the book that you recced that I need to find a link to when I re-listen to this?
Okay, yeah, the first rec is Space Opera by Catherynne Valente. I'll go ahead and write it down in the doc, too.
Okay.
Space Opera by Catherynne Valente. And then my favorite podcast right now is Says Who, hosted by Maureen Johnson and Dan Sinker. It's not a podcast, it's a coping mechanism. And if you're into American politics, but also don't want to be into American politics, that's the podcast for you. Other than that, I can't think of anything. Yeah, those are the two, I would say.
Awesome. And I have a fic link because I just saw Captain Marvel yesterday, finally. Have you seen Captain Marvel yet?
I have not.
It's so good. It's so good. There's a cat. The cat's great. She's great. It's all great. I'm like, it's like reinvigorated like my love for like Avengers stuff. When I thought that the Infinity War had just killed it, I was like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this fandom anymore. Cat, if you get near the cord to the microphone, I will put you in the bathroom.
Oh my gosh. I'm glad we got to hear some kitty meows.
If you jump up here, so help me God. I see you. Anyway,
I want
stand
a cat
over there.
So bad.
You can take this one. She only vomits on things half the time. Anyway, I was going through my fic links for Avengers, and I have a fic link by Copper Badge, and it's called Road Trip. And the summary is Tony is driving from Malibu to Manhattan with a robot in the back seat and Captain America riding escort at Pepper's behest. What could possibly go wrong? Tony's on a road trip with the robot.
Oh my god.
It's a great time, and I really love Copper Badge's writing overall. And
road trip stories are my faves.
Yes. And like Steve Rogers just ends up eating a lot and just like making a cop like be like, hey, I'm Captain America, leave us alone. And it's a good time. I need to reread it. Oh. It's a good time.
That's one of my favorite things to do in writing, and one of my favorite things to read is like just people who maybe shouldn't be together just being forced to be together. So like road trips, and even the story I'm writing about VidCon in a certain sense, because they're all stuck in a hotel room together. I love that kind of stuff. I love it so much.
Forced proximity.
Exactly. It's my favorite thing. Like, oh no, we're trapped in an elevator.
Oh dear. Whatever will we do?
Right? I wonder if there's security cameras.
I love fandom. It's so creative, and everyone writes what they like to read, which is mostly what everyone else wants to read.
Yep.
But a lot of people that actually write books don't write.
Right, yeah, and honestly, like, the story I'm currently working on is very fanfic-like. Like, they're sharing a hotel room. There's only one bed. Oh, no. Like, it's just, there's a lot of,
But that's going to be, like, a bestseller because they'll be like, I understand these tropes. Yep. Yes, here is a book for me.
Yep. It's definitely one of those things that, like, I literally have a list in my head of the AO3 tags that I would use on it, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that. Like, I love fanfic. Like, I love a lot of published books, too. Like, I love to read, and I love a lot of things. But I don't think that saying a book is like fanfic is a bad thing. I think it's a compliment for me in most cases. Especially romance.
Yeah, because
like,
exactly.
Romance books, like, every fanfic I've ever read that I love is better than every romance I've ever read, to be honest.
Yeah. There's me dipping my toes into actual romance novels. Courtney Milan has done really good and is up there with, I'm like, okay, I can see this as like a fanfic.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It does.
But it depends on the author and if they're tapped into like what fandom would be wanting.
Yep.
Figure out the words to use. You can tell which authors also write fic on the side.
Yeah, or authors who started there, or authors who read a lot of it, you know, because like I've never really been big into writing fic, mostly because I have a hard time writing characters that are not mine. I just feel like I can't get into their heads the same way. So I've tried and failed a bunch of times, and I've never really posted anything, with the exception of some Star Wars fic that I wrote in like 2001 that have since been deleted off the internet. So I got a notification for one of them. Oh my God, like 5 years ago, I got a notification from fanfiction.net that someone had commented on a Star Wars fic that I forgot I wrote. And it was like 10 years later. And I was like, why are you commenting on this? Oh my God. And it was negative too. It was negative. It was like, I don't like this. This doesn't work for me. And I'm like, what? I wrote this when I was 12. Anyway.
I'm so glad that all of my fic that I wrote when I was like 12 is in an old reboot, like fanfic archive that is now gone off the internet because the person, I guess, didn't pay for the hosting anymore. So that's like fandom history gone. Then that hurts me, but also I'm kind of glad.
Yeah.
I'm
as
really
soon as I got that notification, because I didn't even know the fic was still up there. But as soon as I got the notification, I, forgot my password and had them like send me a reset link, and then just deleted everything on my account because I was like, I can't.
Yeah. Good Lord. There has to still be old Inuyasha fanfiction up on fanfiction.net from me.
Probably.
Because I didn't delete it. My God.
It's still out there in the universe, baby.
My God. It's going to haunt me forever. Because I don't even remember what account I used or what the name... My God, I can't even think about this. This is horrifying.
On the bright side, nobody can trace it back to you, hopefully.
No one can trace it back.
Yeah.
It's gone. It's lost forever now on the internet.
Yeah. Man. I miss those days. Like, I'll never understand the current trend of using your real name with everything. I don't get it.
No.
Like, no thank you.
I can't. I can't.
I don't need a potential employer searching my name and finding that shit. No thank you.
No, there's a reason that I have a Facebook and there's nothing on it.
Yeah.
And the reason that all of my internet accounts are not, like, associated with me, you would have to know me and have me give it to you.
Yep.
Because no one can, like, Google my real name and pull up, like, a Twitter.
Yep.
There's nothing there at all.
Currently, if you Google my real name, you get some stuff that I wrote for my university's alumni magazine, which is fine.
It's school.
Yeah, and you also get, if you search my name on Amazon, you get somebody who's currently publishing pirate-themed porn romance novels under my name, middle name and everything. So I have to use a pseudonym if I ever get published because I don't want people searching for me and finding that.
Like, oh, this wholesome book by, oh my god, she also writes pirate porn.
It's heterosexual pirate porn, too.
Ew, gross.
Exactly. It's just not my brand in any way. So
gross.
Yep. So I have to use a pseudonym. It's fine.
It's
probably for the best.
Where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me at Rachel Oddment on most places, like Twitter and Instagram.
And you can find the show notes at #fandom.life, and you can find me at Writer Phoebe on Twitter, and you can find the show on Twitter at #fandom on Twitter.
That's the name of the show.
And we'll see you around the internet.
Bye.